and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. Now, friends, this topic today, I feel like, is one that almost every single person that's listening to this episode right now could use a little bit of help on. We're going to talk about control. My guest today, her name is Jennifer Dukes-Lee, and she is the wife of an Iowa farmer, mom to 2 girls, and the author of It's All Under Control. Before that, she was a newspaper reporter for a great many number of years before she started writing books. Now, I love this. She says she loves 80s music. She exercises mostly because she wants to support her queso habit, and Jesus saved her life once upon a time. I mean, she's my kind of girl, 100%. She wants to really share this message out with all of you guys. And you know what? Help us all kind of to release that death grip of control off of our life, just one step at a time. So let's welcome Jennifer Dukes-Lee to the Simplifiers podcast. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, everybody. So fun to be here.
I'm glad you are here as well. Now, Jennifer, I think I told you this previously, but my kids got me this book for my birthday, as if to say, is there a warning flag? Are they trying to tell me something? But I absolutely love it. When I first read the first couple of pages of the book, that's when I really realized that you are my kind of girl, that we are literally soul sisters, long lost here. What inspired you to write this book in the first place?
Yeah, ever since I've been a little girl, I've been this high achieving, take charge person who's always felt like she had to be the most responsible person in the room.
Yeah.
And I imagine that the kind of people that are listening to your podcast are those kind of people, like people that others depend on to take care of things and they get things done. The kind of women who you ask them to do something and it's going to get done. Mm-hmm. So a lot for me, control hasn't really manifested itself in the sense of I want to have my way. I want, to be a narcissistic, controlling other people sort of a thing. It's more feeling like there's a lot on me that I need to be in control of. Mm-hmm. And that has been my great frustration. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't pinpoint it to control until fairly recently, probably about 5 years ago, because at that time if you would have said that I struggled with control, I would have said, absolutely not. As long as everything goes just the way I want it to, I'm totally flexible.
Right. As long as it's perfect to my plan, then everything's fine.
Exactly. And it wasn't that I wanted to control it again, because I wanted, my way. It felt like the right thing to do. It felt like my systems were in order and I needed to manage outcomes because I loved the people that live in this house.
Yes.
I loved the people that I serve with my writing. I loved the people in my community. So in everything, I felt like I got to be my best. I got to be my best. And you get to that point where it feels very wearying. And at the end of the day, I would put my head on the pillow and I would think, wow, I was really busy today, but I didn't really feel all that productive. Mm-hmm. And so I knew something was off. And I really drilled down and found that for me, the issue was control.
Mm-hmm. And, I think that there is such an illusion behind control because we think, oh, well, if I'm in control, then I got all my ducks in a row and nothing is going to stop me, right? Like I am unstoppable and I'm the one that's, controlling all the things around me. But the reality is we're not in control, right? That's spoiler alert.
Yeah. I mean, control really is this illusion. We think that if we have all the systems in place, that everything will go very smoothly. And I think, too, we've been trained that way from an early age, at least in the culture where I live in, where self-sufficiency is highly regarded.
Yeah.
And so the idea that if you could take on more and you can accomplish all of these things, you're sort of elevated in people's minds as being the kind of person who is something pretty special. Mm-hmm. And for me, I love the idea of being able to help others and serve others and do a good job. And so it's just this thing that feeds upon itself more and more and more. And then I feel like I've got to tighten my fists more around my plans and my preferences to make sure everything goes okay. And I realize that, as my worldview is Christianity, and so I realize that if I put my hands so tightly around my plans and my preferences, that God can't put anything into closed fists. Mm-hmm. And so in order to live a life of freedom, in order to live a life where I can kind of go with the flow a little bit more and find my chill again, I have to live with hands open.
Yeah. And before we dive into some simple practical tips on how to live life, I like that, with hands wide open so that you can receive as much as you give. Let's talk a little bit about your journey to this path. So you live on a rural farm in Northwest Iowa, right?
That's right.
I also read, and this just made me chuckle, you DJ sometimes on the weekends at your church. I love that. So obviously you follow Christian faith and you have that as a background. Can you tell us what led you to this point? So your first book was all about happiness, right?
I had one before that even.
Oh, right.
It was about approval, wanting people's approval, which is a little bit of an element of this issue of control too. And then the next one was happiness. And now this one is on control and surrender.
Right. So, the principles you're going to be talking about in today's episode is obviously woven into your Christian beliefs and faith. Like, how did you get to this point where you felt like, wow, control is the next book that I need to write?
So I am the mother of 2 teenage girls. And when they were younger, I was this very attentive parent, the kind of mom who would keep a chart to, monitor her child's pee and like, is she go again? Am I feeding this one properly? Like, how many diapers have I changed? And all of that. And then as they got older, we go to the next stage of making sure every electrical outlet has those little plastic thingies in it, and making sure that I have their cribs and their beds properly situated and arranged for the highest level of safety. And I found myself just all of these little things. I felt like I was constantly hovering over my child. And we've heard of the term helicopter parent. Mm-hmm. But what I could see potentially happening with the direction I was going with my children is that I could be more than a helicopter parent. I could actually end up becoming a lawnmower parent, cutting the path, the preferred path of their mother for their child. And another thing that I saw happening in parenting was, because of my faith, this was really important to me. What I saw happening with my children was that they were very dependent on me, and they would rely on me to help them and help them succeed in life. And I looked at my life, and as a parent, I looked at my girls and I thought, this doesn't fit with my Christian worldview, because I never wanted my girls to rely on me. Yeah. I wanted to rely on something outside of themselves, and for us in our family, that's Jesus. And, maybe for some listeners out there, it's just this, idea of God, or that they would be able to learn to rely on their own, intuition and their own skills and abilities, which I also want for my kids. Right. And so I needed to figure out how to live with a more hands-free way with my children, so that they could have the freedom to make choices, to fail and learn from those failures. As everybody listening knows, that's how we actually end up at that place called success, is by sometimes failing a little bit along the way.
And that's it. Kids need that. They need to have this space, I think, to completely muck it up, right? Yeah, and I am a recovering control freak, I'd like to believe. I'm a planner. So my first career with the Simplifiers actually was planning events. So, managing all the details, all the outcomes, all the risk, all the things, right? So, I completely can relate. And I probably had the poop and pee chart as well for my kids as well. So yes, I completely understand that. But then the truth in that is that when you are able to release a little, you give them the space to step up and learn and grow as well.
Right. And it's such a balance, because the last thing that I would want to happen if somebody were listening to this now, or if somebody picked up my book, is that they would think, you know what, I need to stop doing everything. I need to just fire my life and spend the rest of my days on a floaty in the middle of a lake somewhere. But the truth is, we have these things that we're called to do in our work life and in our home life. And I want people who care about controlling things to be in the operating room. For instance, when my father recently had an amputation of his leg, I want people in there when they were doing his bypass surgery, like people to control the bleeding.
Yes.
I want responsible, take charge, achieving women to be Christian or Christian teachers, or just great public school teachers, or CFOs and CEOs. I want women like that in charge. I don't want people just to throw their hands in the air and say, I'm so done. So my goal with this whole message is to empower women with the beautiful ways that they have been created so that they can be the best version of themselves.
So I want to read a little snippet from your book that I think is really beautiful. And what literally got me on maybe page 1 is, I wrote this book for a woman I know. She wants a life of meaning. She wants to know her purpose. She wants to love and be loved, but she is tired. What exhausts her? Directing outcomes, over-hustling, and managing the impressions she leaves on people. She can't let go of a nagging fear about her future and the prevailing belief that she needs to be the most responsible person in the room. She is tired, yes, but she doesn't know how to stop. This is what she does. She keeps it all under control, and she is under control, thank you very much, smiling even in the trenches and always fine, just fine. I got this, she says. And a lot of people believe her, but she doesn't got this. Her outward fine does not match her inner fatigue. So, Jennifer, you pretty much knock the stuffing out of me, like page 1 of your document, because I go, well, okay, now you've just described me. I mean, that is the truth. Sometimes we go through these moments where we think, right, we got the outward appearance, everything's fine, everything's dandy, but deep down inside there's either a missing part or there's just an emptiness that is deeper. I mean, what do you think is underneath this illusion of control?
It's actually the way that humans are wired, first of all. If you were to there have been studies done about people that like to play the lottery. Yeah. And, if you've played the lottery before, you know that you can let the machine pick your numbers. Mm-hmm. But people think that they are more likely to win if they pick their own numbers.
Interesting.
So because then they have control over it. And really, there is no scientific proof of that at all. But that
numbers are numbers.
That's how people... So another example is people tend to think that they're less likely to get in a car accident if they are the one driving instead of if they are the one in a lower control situation as a passenger next to the driver. Yeah. And so it doesn't matter about the quality of driving of either person. If you are at the wheel, you generally feel like things are going to go well. And that's the way we can be in life too, that underneath this all, we feel like if we can just be at the wheel and direct our own life, then we'll stay on the road and keep moving forward.
So what happens to us if we don't change? Like if we continue to try to carry it all in life and just try to force and be hustling. I hate that word. Hustle, 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 go, 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 grind, grind, grind. All of that. What happens?
We end up weary and overwhelmed. And again, at the end of the day, feeling I was really busy today, but I didn't feel all that productive. Right. We lose a sense of peace that we may at one point have felt in our lives. And if we had ever in our life a clear sense of purpose, that can get really clouded behind all the busyness that sits in front of our purpose. So I like to direct women through processes to help them move away all the cloudiness so they can really drill down to their purpose and take on the things that they're actually supposed to hang on to and figure out what they're actually supposed to let go of so they can shine at the things that really align with their purpose.
Great. And I love this in your book. You mentioned, a very simple framework: delegate, dismiss, or do. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that and when we should say no in life?
Yes. So these 3 aspects. Do are the things that you are called to do, the ones that closely align with your purpose. Do. Dismiss, these are the things that you just have to let go of. They might be things that you've held on to for a long time because at one point you really were called to do them. At one point they really did align with your purpose. Yeah. Or they may be things that you said yes to out of a sense of obligation or out of a fear that you would disappoint people if you didn't say yes. Because insistent people will keep coming to you with more and more demands. Mm-hmm. And I know for my own self, I have become a series of unstoppable yeses. And so I had to figure out what to dismiss. And then lastly, what do we delegate, which can be so hard for women to do? We hate asking for help. We'll be the first one in line to help you, but we don't want to be the helpee, as I like to say. And so when we learn how to delegate, we may not always like the results. We might not like exactly how somebody has done it, but we're putting it off of our plate so that we can really drill down and figure out, again, what to do. So do, delegate, dismiss is a process that I take women through in the book and through a series of charts, because of course I have charts and flow charts in my
But I love
book.
that. I mean, the charts are so simple. That's what I appreciate about them, is that they're simple. It's like asking yes or no. Is this absolutely essential? And, following the chart down to really figure out, like, okay, what do I decide to take on? What do I decide to dismiss? What do I decide to let go of? I think it's brilliant.
I really like those three, and they've been helpful for me in my own life. And it's not just content that makes for a couple nice chapters in a book. It's actually saved my life recently. I went through that whole process myself before I wrote the book. And at the time when I was editing the book, my mother ended up in the hospital for 57 days with a life-threatening infection.
Wow.
My dad, who had recently had a leg amputated, was in our home in a wheelchair while Mom was in the hospital. And I was in the midst of book edits. But because I had gone through this process of figuring out what to delegate in my life, and one of those things was hiring a housekeeper. So sometimes delegating means looking at your finances and figuring out, what do I need to pay to have done?
Yeah.
And for me, there was a lot of shame associated with that, because I knew other women who were able to get their house cleaned all on their own and didn't need to hire somebody. So figure out what that is and get rid of the shame and figure out how to delegate. And so I had been through this process of dismissing and delegating. And I realized after I went through that process, I had created enough margin in my life that when emergencies happened, and they invariably will,
They will.
I then had the freedom to be able to help my mom and dad in a way that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Yeah. And, I think what's behind that, if we peeled the curtain back, a bit, is that I think this is where the trap of social media sometimes is scary, because we just see the highlights reel. We just see the beautiful living rooms with everything sparkly and spotless. And reality is a lot of us, I'll be the first to admit it, live in a messy house sometimes. And so we believe this perception that everybody's got their ish together except for me. So I just need to keep working harder. But it's not true, right? Jennifer, your house is messy sometimes, right? Can you just
It is right now.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I'm just going to get real honest with you now.
Yeah.
And I know that if there's work at home moms right now, you totally get this. But behind that couch over there is a huge pile of stuff from a party that we had yesterday for one of our teenage daughters. Right now, I have a blue shirt on and these nice fair trade necklace from Vibella Jewelry. But down below, I've got my workout pants on because I didn't have time.
Brilliant.
And so, and I got my socks on. But that's just the reality of all of us. And I think if we just come out from behind all of that and say, you know what, I struggle with that too, or this is where my life looks a little bit messy right now. And I find even when on Instagram or Facebook, when I share that kind of content, I get oddly, remarkably, way more likes than if I have the polished version of myself. Some of my most popular posts are generally the ones where I say, here's my mess today.
Yeah.
Or, me right out of a workout, or an honest picture of the way my home looks. So I think people love beautiful things, and I love beautiful things. But I think, we need to present, not just on social media, but in our real life, the truest, authentic versions of ourselves.
Yeah. And, it's interesting to me as well, because, we've really only been using social media for about 10, 12 years tops, right? And so this is such a new thing to our life that I think it adds on another level of pressure, especially for women, that wasn't there a decade ago. And so I would hope that people that listen and had just heard you say this, if you got your workout pants on right now, it's okay, like to take a breath. And that's just reality. And there is grace in that, 100%. So,
absolutely.
Jennifer, you talk about 3 different types of card-carrying control freaks in your book: the driver, the devoter, and the darling. Can you just give us a high-level introduction to what that means?
Sure. So I have a quiz that can help you figure out what your type is. But I think even just hearing the descriptions in the book, in the appendix, if you read those, takes about 5 minutes, you'd be like, oh yeah, I know what I am.
Yes.
In short, the driver is that person who is the one that I was talking about earlier, the group project leader, the driven, take charge, high achieving type of person. And the shadow side of being a driver is being a workaholic, being a perfectionist, having that feeling of busyness, but not productive like we used to have.
Right.
And then we have a devoter, and this would be like that mom version of myself I was telling you about earlier that kept those charts. And I did all of that out of love for my people. And so devoters will be the ones that will pick you up and take you to the airport at 3 a.m. in the morning. And they're great friends and they're great moms. But when they go into overdrive, their shadow side is kind of this overprotective, please do it this way. I don't want you to fail. Let me help you with that kind of personality that in some cases can be damaging, not only to yourself, but to the people that you actually love and want to serve.
Yeah.
So those are two. And then, so that's the driver, the devoter, and now the darling. The darling probably cares less about external control, like figuring out how to control things around them or people. They're more concerned and obsessed with internal control. And what is the version of myself that I am going to show you today? And in some cases, that can be wonderful. Like you go look at an Instagram of your favorite home decorating blog, and it's just like, oh, it just gives you this peaceful, wonderful feeling. They're just beautiful people, beautiful homes, but inside just feeling turmoil sometimes over this feeling of not being able to keep up with it all, and sort of a weariness. And the darlings can be particularly hard on themselves and feel like they are not quite measuring up.
Right. Less than. Yeah. I'm curious then, in this stage of your life right now, through your book launch, which type are you feeling right now in your life?
Okay,
if
so
any.
I am a hot mess. I am all three.
Yeah.
And we all do fall into one. And so I think that those aren't bad. Like to be a driver is actually great. It's just figuring out when do I drop into my shadow side. Yeah. Just like the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs types, any of those types, like when taken to an extreme, what does that look like in my life? And so I hope that's a helpful tool for people. I hope that it's affirming to them. Like I have a name. That's why I am like I am. But this is what I have to look for in my life to make sure that I don't go overboard. So yes, I am all three.
And when I was reading through the book, I mean, I certainly was like, well, the driver is pretty much me to a T. And I appreciated just having a name for it, as well. And just going, like when you start to see the different phases of yourself and where it does start to become unhealthy with yourself and with others as well. I mean, I am the girl that people asked to be on committees, and I am the girl who, people ask for advice and mentoring. I mean, that is 100%. And I think it comes back to like what you're talking about of setting those core boundaries. So let's talk about that a bit. How we can overcome and how we can actually say no in life.
Right. So if there's anything that anybody listening today could do right now, today, is set just one core boundary or a core value, some line that you are going to refuse to cross. So for me, here's a recent core boundary that I set. I will never say yes to anything out of ego just because it's a cool opportunity. And I have been known to do that. I was recently invited to something on the East Coast that a lot of others were invited to. And I almost said yes until I realized that the main reason that I wanted to go is because I wanted other people to know that I got invited. And I know how gross that sounds. I am not proud of it.
Yeah.
But there was that check in my spirit of, hey, do you really need to be going off there? Is it really going to serve your core purpose? Does it really help you shine at the things that God has called you to do?
Yeah.
Or is this really something that under your core boundaries you need to dismiss? And so maybe for you listening, a core boundary is, I will shut that laptop at 5:00, no matter what.
Yeah.
I will have a time of meditation for 15 minutes every morning, no matter what. I won't miss my workout because of wanting to sleep in. or I will allow myself to take a nap every Sunday. I mean, whatever it is, like figure out what your core boundary is and stick to it. Don't make those things negotiable.
And I think that that's so true, because if people are like me, I'm a natural people pleaser. And so I will push my things down to help other people first. But this is where the trap is, right? Is that if you keep pushing your needs down, then you can't help other people. You are so depleted, in your tank. So this is where core boundaries, I think, are the linchpin of it all. Like you understanding what's most important to you, right?
Yes, absolutely. And they're adjustable. I used to have a lot more speaking engagements that I do right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would miss some of my kids' activities, which was fine because I wanted them to see their mom as a person who sometimes had to sacrifice in order to make an impact out in the world. But a core boundary for me right now in this season, which I feel quite sure of, is that I am not to take on any speaking engagements, no matter how big of an opportunity it looks like, if I'm going to miss an activity that my children are in on a weekend.
Yeah.
Now, that's for a season, and that isn't prescriptive for everybody. But for me right now, that's a seasonal core boundary that I am sticking to.
Yeah, and I think that the lesson there is, season. That's the key word there. So wherever you are in this stage right now, I also think, Jennifer, I'm curious if you see it as well, being a woman, that our monthly cycles, like sometimes one week might be like, I'm go, go, go. And other weeks I'm like, oh, I need to slow down, so you have to be a little bit more in tune with that as well, right?
Yes, and I am finding that I have to be more in tune with my body and what my body is telling me.
Yes.
I'm 46 years old, and I have still within me the ambition of my 24-year-old self.
Yes.
But I have the body of a 46-year-old, and I went to the doctor recently, and he said, Jennifer, I think that the symptoms that you're experiencing right now are due to stress. And I said, that can't be. I'm not a stressed out person. I'm loving this. I'm charged up in my calling. I feel like I'm doing all the things that this makes me happy. This gives me joy and happiness. And that's true. He said, Jennifer, it may be that your soul is not stressed and your mind is not stressed, but your body is. Your body is telling you something, and you need to listen to that part of yourself just as much as you're listening to your drive and your desire to achieve.
Yeah. And, it's interesting you should mention that, because we talked to another gal, Abigail Stidley, a while back in the episode or on the podcast. I'll link the episode down in the show notes for people to want to listen to that. But she touched on it as well, this concept of mind, body, and soul connection. And you mentioned that in your book as well. I mean, I think there is multiple elements to us. It's not just our body, not just our mind, but also our soul as well. So, Jennifer, talk to us about living a life, a surrendered life. What does that mean to you, and what does that look like really in your life?
So, for me, to live a surrendered life looks like not just let go and let God. In Christian circles, that's like a really common phrase. And so I don't know where we got the idea that surrender is only let go and let God, because sometimes surrender is hanging on and holding on to something tighter than ever before. Sometimes it's doing really, really hard things like taking in a foster child, or entering the mission field, or fighting for your marriage, or sticking with a church that's just been kind of getting under your skin lately. And so for me, surrendered life looks like figuring out how to balance what to hang on to and what to let go of. And that's a constant evaluation and reevaluation with God. And there isn't an easy little phrase that slaps onto a coffee mug, like let go and let God.
Yeah.
It's knowing that there's a book in the Old Testament called Isaiah, and the prophet Isaiah talks about standing at this crossroads, and that you'll know whether to go to the left or to the right. And I think a lot of people think I have to choose the right way and walk in it, and I have to forever stay on that path. But the really cool part is that God doesn't just send you down that road to the left or to the right and have you walk alone. Every day is a new day to stand at a new crossroads and look to God and say, now what? Left, or do we keep going to the right? In this constant evaluation, in this constant growth, this constant giving grace to oneself, to know that this God who started a good work within us, that he will carry it on to completion.
And you mention in your book, that it's not about taking your to-do list to God and going, all right, this is what I want to do. This is what we're doing today. It's a different conversation altogether for you, right?
Yeah, it's so funny. It's actually not funny. It's embarrassing. I used to come to God with a list of demands like, okay, here's what you need to do for me to get my things done. These are the things and the doors that you need to open. And it was so convicting for me when I realized, Jennifer, you're treating God more like an employee instead of the CEO of this ministry that you have started. Like, quit bossing the boss around. Let him lead your life. And it's been an alternative method of basically saying, God, what goes on my list? Like, what is your plan for me? How can I make choices today that honor your plans for my life?
Yeah, and I imagine also reframing that conversation, regardless if you believe in God or not, like reframing it so that you're not the one that's always making all of the things happen. I think it opens up a different part of your brain. It opens up a different perspective that can be quite expansive. Again, it's like when you release the pressure that everything sits on your shoulders and open up to the idea that maybe the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, there is something greater at play here. I think it changes how you approach and communicate with the world around you, right?
Absolutely. It's not all on you.
Yeah.
It's not all on me.
Yeah.
We put our pieces in place and trust that there's a bigger picture. Unfortunately, if you're a puzzle maker, I'm not really much for puzzles, but I've had grandparents that I've put together puzzles with. And usually you have the benefit of the back of the box to see what the end result is supposed to be.
Yeah.
But for most people, life looks like a series of mismatched pieces, and you're just trying to figure out where to lay those down, trusting that someday, hopefully, you get to see what that picture looks like.
Yeah, and that's it. That's part of living. And I think where I get stuck sometimes, being an impatient person as well, I'm a good mix of control freak and impatient, is I just want to get to the end. I want to see the end result. I want to see the puzzle finished. And I don't remember to slow down and actually enjoy the process of playing and being part of it. Yeah.
That's so good. True.
So Jennifer, the Christmas season is upon us soon. Now, for those that are card-carrying type A control freaks, do you have any tips on how to overcome the overwhelm that happens during Christmas time?
So I, a long time ago, realized how much I should myself during the holidays. Well, I should send out that Christmas card. I should have this house decorated in much the same way that Mom decorated our house. I should start to set a certain number of family traditions so that when the girls get older, they have something to remember. And I realized that through all of that, I had shoulded myself into a state of weariness.
Yeah.
And I actually tell a story about that in the book where I talk about this little activity that we wanted to do as a family, that I wanted to do as a family. And it involved needing to get hay. And you would line the manger of baby Jesus in our little manger set.
Yeah.
If there was an act of kindness done in the home, then you would take a little piece of hay and you would line the manger with kindness. I mean, how sweet. It would promote kindness in the home during the holidays. Well, I could not wait to get that holiday tradition started. And unfortunately, living in Iowa, we are prone to major shifts in weather. And there was such a huge December snowstorm. And I couldn't wait for that thing to get over because I needed to go out in those fields and get that hay. We had bales in the front yard. Yeah. So finally, it had passed. And so I went out into the fields to get that hay. And the snow drifts out there were so deep that I literally fell flat on my back. And I'm standing there looking up at the blue sky, just flat on my back, thinking, how did I get here? How did I get here?
Oh my gosh.
And I think that's where a lot of us are as women. Just, we have gotten ourselves so shoulded into doing all of these things and creating a memorable experience that we find ourselves flat on the back in the middle of the holiday saying, how did I get here?
Yes.
So figuring out, where am I telling myself should? And maybe evaluate whether you need to do, dismiss, or delegate even those things. So take your whole Christmas and filter it through that process.
Yeah, I think that's very wise advice. And I mean, I think we all have, as parents, we do this because we want that perfect picture. We want to create this, absolutely amazing memory that our children will think about 30, 40, 50 years from now. We have such good intentions underneath it, but then we drive ourselves right straight into the ground. We drive our children, our partners, our friends and family crazy. So, I mean, if anyone's listening, please, 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 my dear friend, just slow down. Just let your house be messy. Just don't worry about putting makeup on just for one day. It's okay. And, just give it a little grace. I think that's definitely my advice for you guys as well, to simplify down. Yeah. So Jennifer, your book is out, available now, all the places. It's called It's All Under Control. People can find you on Instagram as well at Dukes Lee. Is that where you hang out the most?
There and Facebook both. Yes.
Okay, great. And we'll put the links down in the show notes for everybody. You can go to her website, jenniferdukeslee.com, and check out more about her book. They have a Bible study. There's free videos. There's all these different elements to it. And I just finished the book, and I absolutely loved it. Every night I was chuckling in bed and also starting to cry because it reached my heart in such a profound way. So thank you, Jennifer, for that book. It's so beautiful as
You're so welcome.
Thing. So I have a few questions I like to ask all of our guests, and as we wrap up, one in particular. You're an author. This is your third book. I know you've got other books, I'm sure, that are coming down the pipeline, maybe one day. But what's one book you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or maybe poking holes and challenging you a bit?
Yeah, so a book that I'm reading right now just came out recently. It's called The Cozy Minimalist Home by Mike Willin Smith.
Yeah.
And I took Mike Willin's Cozy Minimalist course 2 years ago, and that's actually how I came up with the concept of do, delegate, and dismiss.
Yeah.
And so now to have that book in my hands and to be able to flip through it, it's all related to the house, to your home, and figuring out what to do, delegate, and dismiss, what to give away, what to keep. And how to make your home beautiful in a way that fits your personality. So to have her book here in my home, I'm looking at it right now over on my coffee table, is just a joy.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book. Yes, we'll put the link down in the show notes for people to check that out. So tell us, who's maybe one person in your circle or network that you think we should interview on the Simplifiers podcast, and why?
So one person that I have a lot of respect for, and she actually has a new podcast herself, is Crystal Payne.
Oh, yes.
The Money Saving Mom. And she is so practical, has so many great ideas for simplifying and organizing your life, and also saving money. I mean, she is the money saving mom. And I love her podcast. I love her Instagram stories. And I just love her gentle, sweet spirit online.
Yeah, Crystal, I know her. She is so amazing. We will definitely have her on the podcast soon. Great, great recommendation there. So gratitude and simplicity, in my mind, go hand in hand. What's one thing you're grateful for right now in your life?
I feel like right now I am so grateful to be a mom of teenagers, which is really weird for me to say because these are years that I dreaded.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I think I was kind of an eye-rolly, whatever kind of a kid. And I mean, I was a good kid. I did well in school, but I just feel like I don't feel like I was as engaged with my parents as I should have been. And to be able to have these two children that are growing up and chasing after their passions and just plain fun to be around has been something that I thank God for every day.
Yeah, our kids are 8 and 10 years old at the time of recording this, so we're right around the corner from teenage years, and I only can hope and pray that our relationship stays just as strong as it is now when they're that age. Yeah. So Jennifer, one last question for you. And again, I just want to acknowledge you. I think you are doing incredible work. I appreciated so much your natural very much like I was talking to my best girlfriend kind of voice when I was reading your book. So thank you so much for reading or writing this book in a way that is so approachable, and I love it so much. So my last question for you today is this. If somebody is listening to this episode right now and they're going, wow, like sounds like me. You've described me to the T, but I don't quite know how to change. Jennifer, if there's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her, what would you say to her?
I would say don't change. Don't change. Appreciate God's remarkable design in you. Start there. Appreciate the wonder that you are already. You aren't a person to be fixed or changed. There are maybe behaviors or things that you can let go of to be a fuller, more beautiful, peace-filled person. But don't change. It feels like a thing that I would put on the back of somebody's picture in high school, right? Never change.
Yeah.
But I really mean it. I really want to empower women and equip them to see the wonder that they are.
Jennifer, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
My pleasure.